Crypto Decrypted.
Just like every week here on Cryptocurrent Live, we like to roll out a very special segment for you where we take apart one of the bigger concepts here in the crypto landscape. And this week we decided, given that Bitcoin decided to go down into the depths of despair, we would lean into the dark side of crypto. So, what does that mean? Well, we're going to be taking apart a little bit of how crypto is referred to as a money laundering scheme, or it's used for illicit activity, and dive into all that. But the dark side of crypto would be nothing without the dark web. So, Rich, give me a little bit of a synopsis on what we mean when we're talking about the dark web. What goes on?
All right, so the dark web is a different form of the internet that gives you a little bit more access to things that could be seen as a little bit more sketchy. So you have access to things. So, for example, Silk Road was built on top of the dark web, and you can go and find, from what I hear, of course, find things like ways to be able to buy drugs or be able to buy a hitman or a bunch of other terrible, terrible things. Now, the reason that people use this is because it's a lot harder to track back. There's a little bit more anonymity to it, and you have a lot more access to a lot more resources. Um, and unfortunately, it's also used for things like trafficking, again, black market goods, and a ton of other terrible things. So, one of the ways that it's being utilized more than anything is money laundering. So, what is money laundering? It is a way to
Sorry,
wash.
we accidentally included a U.S. Federal Reserve System logo there. Let's change that. My bad. Go ahead and explain money laundering.
So, money laundering. Let's go ahead and look at that. So, what you're doing is essentially washing money. So, you're taking dirty money, aka money that is not within the legal confines of a legal institution, and you are mixing it with legal money that you can then go and use. So, if you've ever watched Ozark, that is a good representation of ways that you can money launder and launder money, wash money, whether it's drug money, etc. Able to bring it into a national system and have it be legitimized. So, crypto has been a way to do that. There's been a couple different ways that it's been used historically. And of course, it's not necessarily a good thing. It's also illegal, and all countries frown upon it. So recently, there was some news that came out that Biden is targeting crypto money laundering and tax evasion and has an entire force going after that. Steve, do you want to kind of talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it really quick. And that is just very, very simple in that President Biden and his administration have decided that they want to go after corruption at the highest level, which between you and me, I think it's hysterical. Government wanting to go after corruption. It's pretty much synonymous with corruption at this point. Anyway, all, political discussion aside, they want to go after 5 pillars of corruption within society today. The third of which ties to cryptocurrency. So what they want to target here is the bigger focus of this dark side of crypto discussion that we have here today. So we wanted to give you this bigger understanding of how in the past and even right now, money laundering and tax evasion, the things that Biden's going after, are still ongoing and how it has played into the crypto narrative over time because it's been changing. But to understand that, you kind of need to break down what are referred to as anti-money laundering typology. So we're going to break this down a little bit here, kind of one by one. So off the bat, there are a number of different typologies within AML, compliance, but there are 4 key ones. And the fourth is kind of suspect right now because they're still trying to define it. But the first 3 are use of non-compliant exchanges, laundering via Bitcoin ATM, and asset tumblers and mixers. So let's take that apart for a sec. When we're referring to use of non-compliant exchanges, we're most of the time talking about going to either a centralized exchange or a non-registered exchange that is not complying with the US government's code for AML. In a lot of cases, that means a KYC. To break that down, it's know your customer laws. So one of the companies that for the longest time wasn't doing that and still isn't in a couple of countries is Binance. Another one was Payza. Payza got destroyed by regulators from a number of different countries because it was not compliant. So when we look across the board, if you are going to a centralized exchange and you're not giving them all that KYC information, which is like your social security number, your home address, your name, giving them a validation of your actual identity, they are not in compliance. So technically, that is a place that you could theoretically be money laundering. And that's why the government does not want that to continue. So anytime the US government's involved, they're asking exchanges to KYC their customers, make sure all of that's out there. There's a whole bunch of other compliance stuff that goes on there. But the big thing that I kind of come back to with this is that it's inescapable. You should want this to be resolved. You should want your exchange to be compliant. The one thing it does not touch, however, is DEXs. So any DEX out there, whether it's Uniswap, SushiSwap, 1inch, Trader Joe, you name them,
And real
QuickSwap.
quick, a DEX is a decentralized
Yep.
exchange.
Yeah, great clarifier. Any one of these DEXs, they can't KYC you because it's decentralized. Its
Yep.
its base nature is that it is not necessarily going to have compliance baked in. It's going to allow for a free market of trade, like in its purest distilled form. So it's really interesting to me how that one's broken down over time, but non-compliant exchanges are one of the money laundering vehicles that we are basically going to be seeing attacked in this new round of regulation. So, Richard, can you break down laundering via Bitcoin ATMs?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, another way that you can go about laundering money is going to these Bitcoin ATMs. So, what you do, or what people have done, is go and bring a ton of cash and bring it to a Bitcoin ATM, exchange the cash for Bitcoin, and then they take that Bitcoin, put it into a KYC Coinbase, like, if you will, exchange or crypto.com. So move that Bitcoin that was bought into ATM via either a paper wallet, or if you moved it to a digital wallet, then you take that Bitcoin and you move it to the centralized exchange, and then you sell out. And so it is a way that it has been explored. And so it then becomes a story of, is it then important for these Bitcoin ATMs to KYC people who do regular transactions? And if you think about a regular ATM, um, it's not that you're, when you go in there, you're putting all your personal information, right? You put in your credit card, debit card, whatever banking that you use, and you go and do the same thing. So, it's, that one's a little bit trickier. I don't know how they're necessarily going to go about trying to clean that up. Um, but that is another way that it is being explored right now.
Yeah, and again, I think that Bitcoin ATMs are really cool and they allow for a greater degree of accessibility to Bitcoin. I don't think that we should see them, I guess, killed off, just because we're trying to comply with AML. However, I think there are ways that we can start to see that resolved. We'll get into resolution later, though. Right now, we're here to focus on the dark stuff.
AML, anti-money laundering.
Yeah, I thought we'd said that a couple times. But anyway, asset tumblers and mixers. This is probably the biggest one. And this is, to me, where the majority of illegal activity goes on. If you want to describe money laundering as a way to clean the money that is dirty money and turn it into legitimized dollars, an asset tumbler or mixer is the crypto equivalent of the most simplified process. It's like you were putting in dirty money and it's getting mixed up with all this other cash and it comes out to a different address, totally clean, not seeing where it was sent from. Tornado Cash is the leading example of this. And just to like give a quick explainer on this, basically Tornado Cash pitches itself as like a privacy coin. So it improves transaction privacy by breaking the on-chain link between source and destination. So it uses a smart contract that accepts ETH deposits that can be then withdrawn by a different address. So to preserve any degree of privacy, a relayer can be used to withdraw to an address with no Ethereum balance. Whenever Ethereum is withdrawn by the new address, there's no way to link that withdrawal to the deposit, ensuring complete privacy. It's a very unique system that they've built. I have to give them credit because, again, to do this and make it easy to use, functional, relatively hack proof. I wouldn't say that it's hack proof because nothing is, but it's relatively secure, is kind of a miracle. That being said, nobody is using Tornado Cash for a good reason. That's just the state of things right now. They're using it to, launder money and launder different crypto assets. Otherwise, the majority of crypto is on a decentralized ledger. Every single transaction is accounted for on like a triplicate level. So it's really important to understand like why you actually want these ledgers to function the way they were built. So that's my take on it. Richard, let's jump into another really fun one, and that's privacy coins.
So, privacy coins, what are they ultimately? They're meant to keep everything that you do private. Just like it says in the name. If you look at the dark web, which we talked about earlier, most of the transactions used to be in Bitcoin, and I think they still technically are, but there's a gigantic shift to Monero. Monero is one of the privacy coins that are out there. Now, why would you do that? Well, again, because Bitcoin is on a ledger, and if you're not using things like asset tumblers and mixers, and you're just doing direct transactions, you can follow the money. And if you really dig deep enough, you can probably figure out where everything has gone. And people have figured that out, that, hey, this is trackable. So what they're doing now is moving towards privacy coins, which the leading privacy coin right now is Monero, which has a unique utility that, again, truly keeps all elements of transactions that you do private. Now, I don't know that at its core, Monero is a bad thing. I think privacy is good. Um, the problem, though, on the other side of privacy is that it then also gives potential bad characters a straight line way to do bad things with no repercussions because you can't track it. So it's a double edged sword. Not really sure how to unpack that too much more than that, but it's things intrinsically aren't good or bad. It's how they're used, and so I'll just keep it at that.
I mean, the big thing here is like it comes down to tax evasion, right? Because looking at it from the consumer perspective as a retail investor, if you're investing in something like Monero, Ethereum, doesn't even matter if it's a privacy coin, like it can be anything. It's on you to report that to the IRS if you're a US citizen, right? It's not like they're going to, have the resources to go out and scour every single blockchain. So with something like Bitcoin, there is a ledger. Like they can go back if they really want to assert the internal assets to develop a system to scour Bitcoin for US transactions. They could do that. It would take decades, but they could do that because it's the government. It takes decades for them to never mind. My point is this. With Monero, it's really, really hard to actually be able to track it as a third party if you want to follow, for example, Richard's transactions. You can't just go up and look that up super easily. So, in the world of Bitcoin having been legitimized, people are starting to go to Monero because Bitcoin is going to probably be one of the first chains that entities like the IRS are going to want to build software around to be able to track.
Yep.
That's the big moral there. But in this entire discussion of tax evasion and money laundering, you start getting into the criminal side of what goes on the dark web and even on the base layers of the internet. And you've probably heard us mention from time to time there are things like hacks, scams, rug pulls, and even organized crime. Now, we're not going to get too much into the organized crime of it all, but I do want to make sure that we take a second to separate a hack from a scam from a rug pull, because people like to just put everything under the label of rug pull.
Right.
But we need to make sure that as educators, you guys understand that they are very different things. Let's start with rug pull and work our way back. Rich, give me the definition of rug pull and how you've been affected by rug pull in the past.
A rug pull is nothing more than a true scam in the sense that something is built with the pure intention to get up to a certain point, and then the leaders who have a ton of the coin with you get on exchange with minimal liquidity, and they sell it all and basically take all of the liquidity out so that everyone is stuck with the bag and have had the rug pulled from underneath them. Again, the example we gave more recently was the Squid Games coin that came out. The people who created it basically rug pulled all the people that came in, and the people lost millions of dollars. So they literally built this thing, walked away with millions of dollars in a short amount of time. That's rug pull.
And the biggest place that rug pulls occur right now within the crypto space is in pre-sales and public sales of new coin offerings. I
Right.
don't want to say ICO anymore because it really is not an initial coin offering anymore. It's either an IEO, an IDO, or you're participating in a pre-sale or a private sale. But one of the things that happened in the last couple of months was, um, as you said, the Squid Games coin, but there have been probably what 150 others at least.
At least happens all the
Yep.
time, unfortunately.
Yep. It's part of this world if you decide that you want to, get into private sales and try to play the really high stakes part of cryptocurrency investing. But then there are also other scams that are involved. So you can just have individuals who create unique organized scams online to get you to click fraudulent links that phish your addresses or can steal your money away. And then lastly, you have hacks. Hacks are typically much bigger organized activities, and we have a lot of these outlined over on the left. But Poly Network was the biggest one that happened this year, and you can also go back in time to what was the most notorious one, which was Mt. Gox back in 2014. All of these were hacks. It was an organized group or a hacker individually who broke into the system and was able to, via an exploit, pull all the money out. In the case of Mt. Gox, it's still not known whether or not it was an inside job.
Right. So that's another part
So
of it, right?
yeah, so give me your take on that for a sec. Let's unpack that.
You know, I just want to say that at the time of 2014, you didn't have nearly the resources and knowledge that you have now. And if they did, I think they probably would have been able to find how this person was able to find the place to be able to go in and hack this. Um, Again, it kind of just if you go back and look at the story, it feels like it very easily could have been an inside job. Not to it hasn't been proven, hasn't been disproven. But for me, it kind of feels like an inside job.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to take a stance on it. I just all I know is that they got hacked and they got a lot of Bitcoin stolen. But let's get into the resolution side of it because again, all of this negative stuff that goes on in the crypto world, it's important to understand that there are ways to solve it, and at the same time, that regulation is not necessarily a bad thing. So what the Biden administration is doing here is not necessarily bad, and we want to make sure that we all understand this. While KYC can be an inconvenience, it is something that at the end of the day is going to lead to a greater deal of like trust, and I don't want to say it's going to lead to mass adoption, but in a way it's going to.
Yes.
So, can you, I guess, unpack for me why KYC is good? Because I don't necessarily think we need to dive into why it's bad.
No. KYC is good because it's going to help with regulatory compliance, which is going to prevent people from getting just scammers coming in and using fake identities to try to have access internally to try to find exposures and weak points within the system to try to create hacks. The next is credibility and growth. As you have people who are compliantly coming on the platform, that means that you now have a background check of a lot of these people and can confirm if they have done any fraudulent or negative things in the past that could make your platform susceptible to potential dangers.
Well, but
The
real quick though, Rich, for the other side of it, like for the exchange or for any of these institutions, they're doing KYC or requiring KYC. It actually adds to their credibility as an institution.
Yeah.
That's another side of the credibility equation. Sorry, go ahead with fraud prevention.
Yep, absolutely. So fraud prevention, you can secure your business identity from thieves, money launderers, and cryptocurrencies, or sorry, and other cybersecurities. The thing with the fraud prevention and why KYC is good and setting up two-factor authentications. I have a story for another day that we can get into, but I recently had a friend who legitimately had their Coinbase hacked because they had KYC and everything else. They were quickly able to contact Coinbase, lock the hacker out, and stop themselves from being owed about $35,000. So again, KYC can be very, very good, especially when things go south very quickly. And then customer retention, you can retain strong risk of cover along with happy customers. That's being able to get verification very quickly. It's going to help retain more of these people because they're going to feel that their money is safe with working with said platform, etc. So some of the benefits of KYC.
Yeah. And I think that honestly it's going to make for a safer crypto environment in the long run. And I certainly hope that even the venture funds are held to the same exact example and that they start, really upholding KYC because it's going to make for a much safer crypto environment. The last piece of the puzzle here in terms of worthy regulation is something I feel like I need to bring up because it has flown so far under the radar. Richard, I don't even know if you heard about this. So please let me know if you have. This actually is coming out of the EU Commission for um, markets in crypto assets. They had a massive amendment that was proposed earlier on this year. I think it was put forward in like September or maybe even a little bit before, where they're really working in the EU to define their regulation. So determine like, what is it that they're going to, create immediate regulatory conditions for. And this document is 540 pages. Like it's massive. That's probably the reason why so many people have not heard of it is because nobody wants to take the time to read 540 pages. But because it's a government document, there is so much in it. And we're going to share a link after this if you want to check out the synopsis of it. Somebody that's really familiar with the matter made a great breakdown of it on Reddit. But in it, by setting up a unique regulatory authority for crypto assets instead of lumping it in with everything else like the SEC is trying to do, or even the CFTC is trying to do. Granted, I would rather the CFTC in our country manage crypto, but that's beside the point. Outside of the US, in the EU, they are way more likely to get something like this passed through, define it from a regulatory standpoint, and then encourage the rest of the world to adopt that standard. It's been done in the past, and frankly, a lot of the financial regulation that comes out of Brussels, which is where a lot of the EU's financial center is based, a lot of that ends up affecting world policy, and it gets adopted broadly. So, like, it has to start in Brussels. This document in particular encourages setting up a unique authority to handle crypto, but it also outlines that, like, NFTs are not going to be regulated. What was it? Stable coins are going to be heavily regulated. Like it gives that level of granular clarification, which in the US, we don't have. The SEC has failed to give any type of clarification. So we need unique regulatory authorities. And that is going to be one of the things that triggers the dominoes falling to start solving an anti-money laundering in the crypto space and to get rid of more of the organized crime element. But Rich, to wrap this thing up, what else do you feel like you need to add? I included a couple of the myths here, just if we wanted to tap on it for a sec, but we can carry this thing out if you want. I think you're muted.
That was weird. So just to wrap this up, we'll dive into two of these myths, not spend a lot of time on it. But myth number one: the majority of cryptocurrency transactions are for illegal activities. Just not true. Shows Research shows that illicit activity from accounts for less than 1% of transactions. There's a lot of transactions going out right now. So if you look at a $2.5 trillion market cap right now, the entire cryptocurrency market, you do 1% of that. That's nothing compared to the rest of the market. So again, myth number one. Myth number two: more illegal activity takes place in cryptocurrency than with cash. Not at all. So cash continues to be king for criminals, and UN estimates 1.6 trillion in cash is laundered each year. So again, there are good and bad with everything you do. There's nothing intrinsically that makes something good or bad, but it's all on how things are being used. There's definitely a dark side to crypto. It definitely has some, from its early inklings, ways for people to expose it and be able to do some not so legal things with it. But I think as it continues to mature, more people are finding ways to be able to track and utilize things. And with KYC and everything else that's going into it, regulations, people actively trying to make sure that we are stopping anti-money laundering, the future looks bright. I think there is still a lot of good opportunity for privacy and everything else, but there's a compliant way to do it. So I'm very optimistic that we will start to get further and further away from the dark side of crypto and bring things into the light.
We can only hope. Well, look, guys, that's going to do it for Crypto Decrypted this week. If you enjoyed the segment, let us know. If we went on too long talking about things that you don't care about, let us know. We want to make sure that we're giving these segments exactly what you are looking for, what you want to get educated on. And the only way we can do that is if you hit us up in the comments or get at us on Twitter, Instagram, and all the other social platforms where you should be connected with us. But that being said, let's get into the final segment of our show where we like to talk about all the fun things that you might want to be betting on. This is Blockchain Bets.